Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to vocabulary. Now the first major unit that we're going to be getting into in this class is going to be ecology. So in ecology we look at organisms and how they interact with each other, and also how they interact with their environment. So for this vocabulary we're going to take a look at 4 key concepts. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead, grab your composition notebook and turn to page 18 and title it Ecology Vocabulary. Now you can either set up your vocabulary for 3-column vocabulary, or you could do 4-column vocabulary. So here we have 3-column vocabulary, so you can combine word and picture in one box, teacher's definition, and then your definition at the end. If you do 4-column vocabulary, it will go word, teacher's definition, my definition, and then picture at the end. And of course by my definition I mean your definition. Now in this video we're going to use the 3-column vocabulary. So the first word is abiotic factor. So go ahead and copy it down. Alright, so an abiotic factor is a non-living factor in the environment. Now the word itself can actually help us remember its meaning. So if we take a look at it, A in the beginning of a word usually means non or not. The bio part, bio means living. So by breaking apart this word, we could see that abiotic simply means non-living. So abiotic factors are the non-living parts of an environment. Now we're studying biology in this class, so why would we even take a look at the abiotic, the non-living factors? But if you think about it, the non-living factors in an environment can have a huge impact on the survival of the living things. For example, if you think about water, water is an abiotic factor. It's a non-living thing, and it can have a huge impact on the survival of organisms. If you think about all the places in the world where you find the most organisms, like rainforests, for example, they get tons of water, and they have tons and tons of different types of organisms that live there. If you think about places in the world that don't get a lot of water, such as deserts, you find a lot fewer organisms there. So non-living things can have a huge impact on the living things in the environment. Temperature would be another example. You think of places where it's extremely hot, you don't find a lot of organisms. You think of places that are extremely cold, you don't find a lot of organisms. So temperature would be another example. When you come up with your example in the my definition section, try to think of something else besides the examples I've already given you. Alright, next word. Autotroph. Now we're going to learn both autotroph and producer. They mean the same thing. So a lot of the times you're going to hear me interchange those words as we go through this unit. So autotroph and producer are the same thing. So go ahead and copy this down. Alright, so autotrophs are organisms that can take energy from the sun and use it to make or produce their own food. Now that's where the producer part of autotrophs come from. Now a lot of students get confused with this, and they say something like, hey, I see my mom cooking in the kitchen, so she's producing food for the family. That must mean that humans are producers. Well, that's not quite the same thing. In that case, your mom is preparing food for the family, which is not the same as producing her own food. So autotrophs are organisms that can trap the sun's energy and produce their own food by making molecules that trap the sun's energy. Now, if you look at all the organisms out there, there's a very specific group of organisms that do just that. So if you know it, go ahead and say it. Very good. Plants are examples of autotrophs or producers. They're the best examples actually out there of organisms that can trap the sun's energy and make their own food. Alright, next we have heterotrophs, which are also known as consumers. So just like autotrophs had producers, heterotrophs have consumers as their synonyms. So I'll be using these two words interchangeably throughout this unit as well. So go ahead and write this down. Alright, so heterotrophs are organisms that cannot get energy from the sun and produce their own food. That's the best way to think of a heterotroph. Any organism out there that has to eat other living things, and when I say eat other living things, I mean eat either animals or plants or insects, any other living organism, in order to get their food, they are heterotrophs. Now, the process of actually eating other living things is known as consuming. So heterotrophs are also known as consumers because they have to consume, eat other living things in order to get their energy. All right, last word is food chain. So a food chain, these are one of those things that students sometimes mix up as well. So food chains, actually, the whole point of a food chain is to show how energy is being passed along in an ecosystem. A lot of students think that the purpose of food chains are to show who's eating who. Now that's actually a byproduct of a food chain. When you set up a food chain correctly, it's showing you where the energy is flowing from one organism to the next. And by looking at it, you can also see who is eating who in the ecosystem. So let's take a look at how to set up a food chain real quick. So just a real quick sketch of a food chain to help us understand the difference between a food chain showing who's eating who versus actually its purpose, which is to show how energy is flowing in an ecosystem. So if we take a look here, so this is going to be the wrong way. So let's say there's grass. So there's grass growing here, and there's a cow. Please forgive me for this horrible, horrible cow. Move. Okay, so there's the cow. Now, if you think that food chains are for showing who's eating who, you might draw your arrow like this. So the cow is eating the grass, so you point an arrow from the cow to the grass. But that's not what food chains are about. So this is actually the wrong way. Okay? The correct way to draw a food chain is like this. So let's say we have grass here, and here's my poorly drawn cow once again. Ooh, gotta get his eye in there. Okay. Food chains are to show the direction that energy is flowing in an ecosystem. So energy flows from the grass to the cow when the cow eats the grass. So it's showing energy flow from the grass to the cow. And if we had a human here, energy would flow from the cow to the human when the human eats the cow, like this. Okay? So this would be a food chain the correct way, with arrows pointing in the direction of where energy is flowing. Alright, so go ahead, you're going to have a little bit of time right now to finish up drawing pictures and writing in your definitions.